Andrew and Courtney Simpson, although childless, were happily married for over a decade. Having children was something they both wanted, but they waited until they were confident in their careers and could financially support a family on one income. They were both in their 30s and successful lawyers. Drew was a trial lawyer in civil law, and Court handled contract law for a well-known local firm in their hometown. They finally reached such a financial level that they agreed to attend their first national convention of the American Bar Association. It was something that both of them had once looked forward to. During the long drive to the headquarters hotel, where they had a table reserved for the event, their main conversation was about the baby. They both agreed that the time had come, but Court admitted that she was worried about the prospect. It was at the board of directors reception on Wednesday evening that everything fell apart. It all started well enough when they both enjoyed the atmosphere and the companionship of fellow lawyers. It was late at night, after the official part of the reception was over, and there was more drinking, dancing, and loud talking, when Drew noticed that Court was in a playful mood. It definitely wasn't a bad thing because it always led to making love at the end of the evening. Courtney was a beautiful woman with a lively personality, although somewhat quirky and always flirtatious. Tonight was no exception. Drew, on the other hand, was more calm and restrained. It was very unusual for a trial lawyer. At social events, Drew tended to blend in with the background. He really enjoyed watching people and how they interact. If someone started a conversation, Drew was immediately actively involved. He was just rarely the first to start conversations with people he didn't know. When his wife ordered her fourth mojito of the evening, Drew ran his hand along the inside of her stocking-clad thigh and slowly approached her bosom. He felt the warmth she radiated with his fingers. He had spent an inordinate amount of time on the dance floor with numerous partners that evening and was looking forward to returning to their hotel room. She leaned forward. She let out a low murmur of approval and purred. "I want to have fun tonight, honey," without taking my eyes off him. "I can see that. I feel it too, baby. Let's go to the room. Look around you, honey. We've never been to this city before. Do you see anyone you know?" Drew reflexively looked around. "No, I think not. What's the matter?" "Me. I want to have fun tonight." It was impossible not to notice the very strong emphasis on the I. He was stunned. No doubt he understood what she was talking about. But, although he was deeply shocked and severely injured, as an experienced trial lawyer, he instinctively knew that he should not show his true emotions. Drew couldn't imagine where it came from. The only thing he could point to as a possible warning sign was his wife's unwillingness to have a child. And yet she had just agreed to do just that. "I see, but what about our relationship?" She ignored his question. She was not a trial lawyer, but she knew how to interrogate witnesses and knew that she should not allow her opponent to distract her attention. "Was I a good wife? In the 15 years that we've been together, have you ever had the slightest doubt about my love and complete devotion to you? From the moment we became exclusive in our first year, name at least once. One case, just one. I know I'm flirting, but have you ever had doubts about me when you watched me do it?" You'd think she just made the simplest of rookie mistakes a lawyer could make. Asked a question she didn't know the answer to. But in truth, there was no mistake, because she knew the answer. "No, it wasn't. I never had any doubts about your commitment to our relationship until 30 seconds ago." "Why now?" He accepted the inevitable. It was amazing how quiet she seemed in the middle of a nightclub with flashing lights, loud music, and a DJ surrounded by more than 200 drunken lawyers. In the midst of all this, they spoke in a normal voice, but did not miss a single syllable from each other. "I told you I'm ready to give birth. I just want this weekend to be for me. I deserve it. And on Monday, I'll throw away my birth control pills for the sake of our future." She pushed his hand away, leaned back in her chair, and crossed her arms, emphasizing her ample cleavage and making it clear that the conversation was over. "I understand. Have you chosen anyone yet?" Naturally, he already knew the answer to his question. "Yes," she answered softly but firmly. "Okay, one last question. What kind of reward are you willing to pay?" "What is the reward?" "Don't mess around with me. You're a contract lawyer. You know what a reward is. What are you offering me for consideration? What price are you willing to pay?" Now he was about to lose control. He was stunned by how quickly his life was falling apart. "Darling, the only price in question is your ego. I know that by doing this, I'm going to hurt you, and I'm going to spend the next 30 years making that pain go away. It has nothing to do with what we have. It's Wednesday night, and we don't have to leave until Saturday morning. I will return to our hotel room on Friday evening, and we will start practicing making babies. Everything will be fine. It was all over. 15 years together, more than 10 years of marriage. The end of our family, which will never be. No baby showers, birthday parties, first days of school, graduations, brides, or grandchildren jumping on our laps. She just confessed that she intentionally hurt her husband. A deliberate violation, if you will, and she didn't even blink. For some reason, it didn't matter to her. Okay, I'm going to bed. I do not know when I will see you. He turned and walked away without looking back. He heard her calling him, but he didn't care what she said anymore. Well, it went better than I expected, Courtney thought smugly to herself. What was that? I do not know when I will see you. She didn't think about it anymore and turned her attention to the intended goal. She looked into his eyes and smiled seductively. She got up and crept up to him. Drew didn't know how he managed to get back into the room. He vaguely remembered someone asking if he was okay while he was in the elevator, but his head was spinning and he was in a bit of shock from what had happened. Everything seemed so unreal. He wasn't sure how long he sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall, but eventually a plan formed. He knew what he had to do and forced himself to move forward. It was only a 3.5-hour drive home, but Drew knew he had a couple of days to get it done. He knew that for Courtney, he didn't exist for the next 48 hours. He had plenty of time to do what needed to be done. He realized that the first thing in the morning he needed to report their stolen joint credit cards. If he was lucky, some hotel maid would find Court's purse, which he had left in the room, and pick it up without telling him. Drew wasn't going to touch anything his future ex-wife had left in the room. He also thought that if the hotel maid took the purse, it would give him at least until Tuesday. The divorce itself will be simple and clean. They lived in immaculate condition. No children, no home, no shared property. They have always kept their finances separate and contributed to expenses on an equal basis. They earned about the same amount of money, but the divorce was the easiest part. Starting over was much more difficult. Drew quickly packed his suitcase and was ready to walk out the door. He stopped for a moment and thought about leaving a note for her, but then changed his mind, went out into the corridor and headed for the elevator. The sound of the room door closing automatically echoed down the hallway and signaled that he was closing the door to his previous life. On the way to the lobby, an idea occurred to him, and he stopped at the reception desk to check if everything was in order. My wife is in the car. We have an emergency situation at home, and we must leave immediately. We left the keys in the room. He saw the officious clerk press a couple of keys and realized that the cards were inactive. He couldn't help but smile a little as he went outside, knowing how much trouble Courtney would have in a couple of days. 7 years later, Drew was sitting in the hotel restaurant, sipping iced tea, and waiting for his food to arrive. The seminar was really interesting, and it should be a valuable learning experience helping him in his family law practice. He noted that the date on the newspaper that someone left on the worn vinyl seat was almost 7 years since his final divorce. At first, he didn't realize that he had said it out loud, and, slightly embarrassed, looked around to see if anyone had heard him. He hadn't thought about Courtney in a long time. Although his divorce was relatively simple, this experience made him realize how unfair the so-called no-fault system can be to the wrong party. To be honest, although the system existed because some people can't handle their own shit, they behave like children, try to wreak havoc on the other side, and the system has to step in and solve it for them. These were the cases when the old axiom, "no one wins in a divorce," is really true. In any case, it was the motivation Drew needed to switch his major to family law. The truth, he discovered, was that most divorces these days actually happen only because both sides have made up their minds. There were few arguments, and both sides worked to end their situation as quickly and painlessly as possible. He dealt with any case that was presented to him. However, he really enjoyed dealing with the relatively rare case of cheating, and he suspected that his client's spouse was trying to tighten the screws with his client. His thoughts were abruptly interrupted by a voice he still recognized. "Hi, Drew, how are you doing?" He looked up and, incredibly, saw her. He couldn't have been more shocked if he had been hit with a cattle prod. Hey, Court, believe it or not, I was just thinking about you. What are you doing at the family law seminar? I'm not involved. I'm here on another matter. May I sit down? Of course, I'm sorry. He motioned for her to sit down. I'm really shocked to see you, so you'll have to forgive my manners. Wow, I really don't know what to say. She sat up straight and spoke in an angry tone. You've never even talked to me, Drew. You have not responded to any of my attempts to contact you. You never said a word to anyone in my family again, including my mother, who, as you know, loved you very much. You didn't even show up at any of the hearings. You just left. I had nothing to tell you. Have you been together for 15 years and you couldn't even say fuck you before you ran away? I went up to our porch that Monday night and I got the divorce papers filed before I could walk through the door. When I finally got inside, there wasn't a single thing in the apartment that reminded me of you or our marriage. I see you ruined our marriage in the blink of an eye with an incredibly selfish act, and am I the bad guy? If that's all you want to say, just go away and leave me the hell alone. Drew, I'm really sorry. Just get out of here, Court, now. He turned purple with rage. Most of the restaurant was now looking at them. She got up and stumbled away in tears. Just at that moment, a whirlwind hit Drew. They were the twin Chatterbox sisters and their younger sister. They came at him at full speed, as they usually did. His wife was right behind them. She laughed and smiled, but her smile quickly disappeared when she saw his face. Her gaze darted to Courtney's rapidly retreating figure. That's her, isn't it, Drew? He could only nod his head as he was busy with the 3 children. Without saying another word, his wife Celia rushed after Courtney in the blink of an eye. Drew's eyes followed her movements as she caught up with Courtney. They got into a conversation that ended with Celia helping Courtney sit down. They must have talked for at least 10 minutes. It seemed like they exchanged contact information, then Celia hugged Courtney and they broke up. Celia returned to the table and grabbed their youngest so that Drew would have a chance to corner the twins with a fight. Drew's eyes and mouth were wide open when Celia sat back down. She's coming to our house in a couple of weeks, and you two will talk. I mean, really talk. Don't say anything. Just nod your head if you understand. Her tone brooked no argument. So he just nodded and started fighting off the 2 little monsters in his lap that were now his life. Later that evening in their hotel room, after the 3 musketeers had fallen asleep, Celia looked at him and asked, "Is there anything you want to say or ask her?" He took a deep breath and spoke softly. "For the first few years I wanted to, but I guess my pride wouldn't let me. But now? No, I have nothing to ask, and I'm glad I didn't give her the opportunity then." "What? You're kidding? It can't be serious, can it?" "This is very serious, Celia. If I had let her talk to me, then maybe she could have said something that would have made me change my mind. But then I would never have met you, and our 3 children would not have existed. No, I don't need to talk to her, and I don't regret anything." She hugged her husband and showered him with kisses. "You know what to say to a girl, don't you, kid? But the poor woman needs to talk to you. So the least you can do is sit and listen." "I'll do that. But really, what's the point? All she's going to say is how sorry she is. If I ask why, she'll say she doesn't really know, etc., etc. But I'll do it for you, and maybe it will help her calm down." "But why would I do that?" "Drew, be nice now. Maybe I can't define it for you. But maybe you would have yelled at her for a couple of minutes after you saw her. Maybe this is what will close the past for you too. Maybe you're right, but even if you exclude you and the girls from the equation, I realized before I met you that my life was better without her. The divorce made me rethink my life and what was important to me. Oh, of course, I went through the usual emotional turmoil that most people experience when a marriage fails. But this setback made me take a hard look at myself, which I would never have done if she hadn't been acting so stupid." Drew paused to think and catch his breath. "They say that the greatest successes can be the result of our biggest failures, and I firmly believe that this is true in my case. I'm much happier doing family law now than I've ever been doing civil law. Sometimes I start to feel like I'm really helping people. I know I don't earn that much money, I don't drive a Beamer, and I don't live in a suite overlooking the lake. But I'm happier than I've ever been in my life. And now what about her? Maybe you should ask her that question. What's the point, Celia? I don't have the slightest regret about where I am right now." He paused and continued in a voice slightly louder than a whisper. Perhaps this is not true. I have one regret. I should have talked to her mother. She's a really nice lady. I know she loved me, and I liked her. Since both my parents had long since left, she was like a surrogate mother to me, and I left without saying a word to her. Celia really couldn't say anything else. She had hoped that somehow meeting up would be as good for Drew as it was for Courtney, but now she had doubts if that was the case. Was she forcing this on Drew? And it would only serve to fish out a past he no longer cared about. But will she be able to stop it? As it turned out, Celia didn't have to do anything. The meeting never took place. The night before Courtney was supposed to arrive in town, Celia's phone rang after midnight. At that time, she was always afraid to answer the phone for fear of bad news, but she answered reflexively. There was a clearly upset woman on the other line. Celia? This is Angela Jones, Courtney's mother. I need to talk to Andrew. The phone rang, waking Drew up, and Celia handed him the receiver. It's for you. Andrew, this is Angela. Courtney committed suicide yesterday afternoon. This statement was followed by the sobs of a man in such intense pain that it is impossible to describe. I'm so sorry, Mom. I do not know what to say. Oh my God. It's my fault. Drew was crying now, but there were no words. Celia, who had heard all this, had clung tightly to her husband and was now openly crying, thinking that there was some kind of her fault in this. Andrew, it's not your fault. She had a lot of problems, and she brought them on herself. There's a lot you don't know about her after the divorce. She left you a sealed letter. I hid it from the police. No one knows about his existence except you and me. What do you want me to do about it, Andrew? Just keep it to yourself for now, and let me think about it. Can you do that? Of course. Andrew, I need you to be with me. Can you come? I'll be there as soon as I can, Mom. I'm going to take my whole family with me. I want you to get to know each other. I know you'll like them. I'll call you back tomorrow and we'll make a plan. Is there anyone with you right now? You shouldn't be alone. Yes, my friend Joyce is staying with me. I can't wait to meet your family. I'll talk to you tomorrow. And the phone went dead. Courtney's memorial service took place 7 days later on a cold but clear autumn day, and as promised, Drew and his family were there. There were only a few people in the hall. Obviously, despite the fact that Courtney was a very competent lawyer, she didn't have any real friends. She was cremated, and her ashes were to be scattered in the park, which she and Drew often visited when they met. Angela said it was the happiest time in Courtney's life. The loss of her daughter by her own hand was an almost unbearable burden for Angela, but she quickly fell in love with Celia and especially the three girls. By the end of the week, the girls started calling her Grammy Angie. Angela told me what happened to Courtney's life after Drew left. He was shocked by the revelations about risky behavior, substance abuse, and mental health issues that followed the divorce. She even explained the reason why Courtney was staying at the same hotel as Drew. She disappeared with two men she met at a nightclub and was gone for more than a week. When she came back, she had bruises on her. According to Angela, there was nothing unusual about this. Courtney was also close to losing her partnership at work. He was amazed at how one bad, sudden decision had taken Courtney's life out of control. The night before Drew's family was supposed to go home, he and Celia talked for a long time and came to some decisions. The next morning, Drew took Angela aside while Celia occupied the girls. Mom, we need to talk about a couple of things. First of all, Celia and I want you to come live with us. There's nothing keeping you here right now. You don't have to make a decision right away. However, we want you to think about it very seriously. We would like you to be with us. If you decide, we'll be there to help with the move. Please think about it, okay? Oh, darling, that's so sweet of you. I promise I'll think it over carefully, but I'm going to miss her so much. And she couldn't stand it anymore. Drew hugged her while she tried to calm down. When she calmed down, he continued, we need to talk about the letter. I think the best thing we can do is take the letter and throw it unopened into this fireplace. This is a letter for you, Andrew. I know, but I will never read it. If you give it to me, I'll burn it. However, I want to give you the opportunity to keep it for yourself. I don't know about you, but I want my memories of Courtney to stay until the divorce. Your memories should also be of that time. And I'm worried that if we read this letter, we'll remember her as she became after the divorce. I don't want anything to do with this damn letter. I'm giving it to you. If you decide to read it, the only thing I would like to ask is that you never, and I mean never mention anything about it to me. Angela was shocked by his response, but began to understand Andrew's reasoning. She desperately wanted to remember her daughter as she was before her actions ruined her life. Maybe there was genuine remorse and recognition of how painful her decision was, but maybe there was only more pain inside. Andrew told her about the meeting with Courtney a few weeks ago. What if Courtney only had more anger and guilt to bring down on Andrew? Courtney wasn't in the best state of mind, especially since she ran into Andre. Angela was shocked by his response, but began to understand Andrew's reasoning. She desperately wanted to remember her daughter as she was before her actions ruined Heath. Maybe there was genuine remorse and recognition of how painful her decision was, but maybe there was only more pain inside. Andrew told her about the meeting with Courtney a few weeks ago. What if Courtney only had more anger and guilt to bring down on Andrew? Courtney wasn't in the best state of mind, especially since she ran into Andrew. Angela was torn apart. Before they left for home, Celia also had a private conversation with Angela. Please come live with us. We really want you to be a part of our family's life. I don't think you realize,